Good night, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to a wonderful opportunity to talk about women in photography, but especially to have women who are in the thick of photography talk with us. We have Sharon Farmer this evening, sitting next to me. And a photography curator, Ann Wilkes Tucker, is joining us from her home in Texas. There you are. I'm your moderator, Helena Zinkham, Chief of the Prints and Photographs Division in the Library of Congress. And I'm going to start with a question that we should just get out of the way right up front. Shouldn't photographers, who happen to be women, just be photographers? I think they should. On the other hand, and why is that? Because photos should be able to speak for themselves without any assumptions that come when we begin to think about gender. On the other hand, right, women are underrepresented in the field of photography. And I have a statistic or two to help remind us of that. And that makes it important to listen and to learn from those who have made their way successfully through the field and who can inspire others to keep continuing. So that's why we're here today. I have a feeling I'm speaking to the choir, but I wanted to just get it out there. We're moving on. Because there's also a practical consideration, isn't there? In a world with billions upon billions of photographs, when you are wanting to learn about women in photography, it's hard to find that work. Fortunately, the Library of Congress, we only have 14 million photographs. And what's truly fortunate is we have a wonderful exhibition on display now called Not an Ostrich. And we're going to use that as our foundation today. 165 different photographers represented in that show. 35 are women. And that's where we'll concentrate this evening, the special work that those wonderful women created. The exhibition was created initially for the Annenberg Space for Photography in Los Angeles. That museum has now unfortunately closed, so we were especially delighted to welcome home those 400 photos from Not an Ostrich and put them on display here in Washington in the Jefferson Building. Wallace Annenberg, an important champion of photography, she commissioned that exhibition. So right away we have another important woman in photography. And one of my favorite quotations comes from Wallace Annenberg. She was explaining, why does photography matter? A great photograph does so much more than capture what's in front of us. It captures what's deep inside of us, the trials and the triumphs that are not always visible to the naked eye. And that's the way that pictures, I believe, really talk deeply to us. They make us laugh as well. But the looking is a conversation, not a passive activity. They touch us to our core. I'd like to tell you a little bit now, even though many of you are well acquainted with Sharon, but I'd like to tell you a bit about two other remarkable women in photography. Sharon Farmer, and I think we can go one slide forward, and one more. There we are. Sharon Farmer has become well known as the first woman to lead the White House Photography Office, appointed by President Bill Clinton. As you can see in the slide, Sharon was on the spot when President Clinton brokered a peace meeting with Yasser Arafat of the Palestinian Authority and the Prime Minister of Israel. But she was also on the spot when the cat Socks had a special moment. I hope you'll enjoy Sharon's own self-portrait as she was just getting started in photography. That year is 1980. And she contributed what has become one of the most popular photos in the whole Not an Ostrich show. Beatrice Ferguson, well into her 90s, mind you. Inspirational, her joy in the hula hoop, and her skill. Now, Sharon often teaches photography, and for me, that's her special gift, her secret power, her ability to inspire any one of us to pick up a camera, or maybe a cell phone, and look through a lens so that we will see and understand the world differently, hopefully a bit better than just looking with our own eyes casually. I hope you all will be delighted to know this evening that the National Press Photography Association, they are giving Sharon their highest award. It's called the Founders Award. I think we get one more applause. Anne, I'm turning now to you, so get ready to feel, I hope, proud, maybe a little bit embarrassed. Anne Tucker is joining us online from her home in Houston, Texas. She is the curator for the whole Knot and Ostrich exhibit. It took years to figure out how to select 400 photos from all that 14 million. And we're celebrating Anne's career tonight too, because her very first book was published 50 years ago. And just look at that title. It couldn't be a better fit, The Woman's Eye. I commend to your attention the introduction to the book. Some books don't hold up, but this one did. Her groundbreaking introduction is clear, nuanced about all aspects of women in photography, many thoughtful insights, in addition to the dynamic work of the 10 women who were showcased in The Woman's Eye. In the 1970s, Anne's getting started, and a photographer named Mike Mandel went around the country and interviewed more than 150 photographers and created baseball cards for them. And Anne was right there in that growing community. Laura Gilpin is on the slide, but also Judy Dater, who created the cover for The Woman's Eye. That's Twinka. And I brought these out as a reminder of a growing community. So there are more and more representation, and Anne's secret power, a mentor. She has brought so many young curators into the field, but also guided and coached photographers themselves. This resulted in many exhibitions and more than 45 books so far. I'm going to just say so far, Anne. All right, you feel ready? I hope the microphone is working loud enough for the whole room here and for the video at home. This is the run of show. Anne is going to go first and give us an overview of the history of women in photography, because that's her specialty. And then Sharon has brought beautiful photographs from her work and career that we can enjoy. We'll turn the program over to you all for your questions around 6:45, and I hope you'll be able to stay even past 7, because we're going to go on up to the exhibition and continue the conversation with the actual pictures in front of us. Anne, do you feel ready?
Yes, thank you.
I hand over to Houston.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I can't see you, but I know that you're in a wonderful room in a wonderful building. So I hope that's a good beginning, and I do hope you'll go up and see the exhibition. Please pardon me for reading, but I really, there's a famous Mark Twain quote that he apologized for writing a long letter because he didn't have time to write a short one. So I had to write this speech to keep getting it down to the time limit. So thank you. Okay. This lecture would not have been possible without the thrill of working in the Library of Congress archives with its staff for over 50 years. The lecture celebrates the exhibition, Not an Ostrich, currently on display in the library's magnificent Jefferson building. I had the privilege of working with the library staff for several years to review thousands of photographs in the process of curating Not an Ostrich. Thanks also to Wallace Annenberg, and the Annenberg Foundation for commissioning this exhibition. The lecture is indebted to the library staff, who've written informative text on most of the women in today's lecture. These essays are currently posted on the LSU website, and I have quoted from their texts with thanks, and I'm encouraging any of you that are interested in knowing more about the women in the lecture, just go to the Library of Congress website. The women presented in this brief lecture represent a small selection of the women in the exhibition. I also hope that you will take the time to see the exhibition. You will see segments featuring 174 years of portraits, sports, lecture, built environments, landscapes, science, business, arts, entertainment, social, religious, and political life. You will see radical changes in fashion, inventions, transportation, dancing, cities, holidays. The movie that accompanies the show will introduce you to some of the photographers featured in the exhibition. The women featured in this lecture regarded themselves as artists, portraitists, reporters, and documenters. Some focused for extended periods of time on social issues such as unemployment, armed conflict, and the environment. Some had short-term assignments for newspapers or magazines. Some women were elevated to full staff. Other women owned their own portrait studios. None of these jobs were easy for the women to acquire until very recently. They were honored for their capacity to engage our imaginations with pictures that might have been made 100 or only 5 years ago. I begin with Gertrude Kayserbeer and Frances Benjamin Johnston because they were among the first American women to achieve prominence as photographers. Kayserbeer and Johnston first approached their professions by seeking formal education. Kayserbeer attended Pratt Institute in New York and sought further training in Europe. Johnston studied painting and drawing at the Académie Julienne in Paris, then studied art at the Art Students League in Washington. At first, Johnston illustrated her magazine articles with drawings. Then she switched to photography and apprenticed at the Photographic Laboratory at the Smithsonian Exhibition. Slide, please. You can see from their portraits that Kayserbeer is dressed eloquently and assumes a traditional but commanding pose. Johnston takes the daring pose, especially for that era, with her skirt raised and holding a beer mug and a cigarette in her hand. However different they were in photographic styles and professional demeanor, both women were eventually recognized as being among America's most eminent photographers. Slide, please. Kayserbeer suppressed her desire to be an artist until she was 36 years old and her 3 children were almost grown. She longed to make pictures of people, especially women and children. Around 1898, she entered the competitive field of portrait photography, specializing in photographing prominent people whose portraits were in the newly illustrated public magazines. She worked to change portrait standards by using natural, not artificial light. She arranged her subjects in natural settings. Sharp focus was of less interest to her than soft light. Like her images, her titles were shaped rather than purely factual. Her goal was to evoke an emotional response from the viewer. These images were widely admired in the photographic community and in arts publications. Slide, please. Her most famous picture was The Manger, which she was paid $100, which would be $3,500 today. Slide, please. In 1898, Kayserbeer began to invite Native Americans who were part of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in New York into her home for settings. She was personally drawn to meet the photograph meet and photograph them because she had played with Native children while she was a child in Colorado. The most famous portrait from these sessions is the Red Man. The library has the original negative, which, when compared with the print that you see here, reveals that Casimir artistically modified the portrait, which is another instance of the dual nature of her work. She decided that her initial vision through the lens needed artistic interpretation to fulfill her image. Slide, please. Francis Benjamin Johnston, a 60-year-old career as a photographer, began with portrait, news, and documentary, and later turned to focus on historical architecture and gardens. Initially, she opened her own commercial studio in Washington, D.C., and specialized in portraits of women, but also photographed many distinguished men and their families. She was accepted as an unofficial court photographer with access to the White House during the terms of 4 different United States presidents. Here are photographs of President William McKinley and of Mrs. Grover Cleveland and the cabinet ladies posed in Johnson's studio in 1897. Slide, please. An interest in progressive education resulted in pioneering projects to document students at public schools in Washington, D.C., as well as important series of group portraits of 2 African-American schools, the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama and the Hampton Institute in Virginia, both of which produced important future African-American leaders such as Booker T. Washington. She also photographed the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania. Johnson was skilled at promoting her own work, but also supported other women photographers with articles, such as in her 1897 article, What a Woman Can Do with a Camera. At the Universal Exposition in Paris, in France, in 1900, she won medals for her own photographs, as well as organized the first exhibition of photographs of American women ever presented in Europe. A series of articles written by Johnston and published in the Ladies' Home Journal, titled The Foremost Women Photographers of America, did a great deal to help these women's careers once they returned to America. Slide, please. In her final lecture, Johnston began to specialize in architecture and garden photographs. That is the elder Johnson on the left, still photographing with her large format camera. Between 1927 and 1944, her architectural work was supported by the Carnegie Corporation to record surviving early buildings and estates in 9 southern states. She was 80 years old when this project was completed. I've spent more time discussing Casimir and Johnston to establish that very serious and talented women worked as photographers in the early years of the medium. Also to say that all but one of the women represented in this lecture, by only one image, has decades of work as a photographer. Like Casimir, and particularly like Johnson, each of these women worked on projects that sometimes took years to complete. Slide, please. Other women photographed Native Americans in their home territory or continued to seek them out while they traveled to public fairs or with traveling shows. K.T. Dodge is best known for this photograph of Apache devil dancers as they were posed in the American Southwest. Thus far, I've only found one other image by Taylor and hope more will become available. The Girard sisters opened their studio in 1903 in St. Louis, just before the St. Louis World Fair. Working with people at the fair, they specialized in photographing indigenous people from other countries as well as America. Their best-known photographs were of Native Americans, including this picture of Geronimo, a leader of a band of Apache people known for raids and competitive actions against the Mexican and the U.S. military troops. Once Geronimo was captured, the U.S. capitalized on Geronimo's fame as a prisoner and displayed him at various fairs and exhibitions, including St. Louis. Slide, please. Doris Ullman and Laura Gilpin both studied in New York with the influential photographer Clarence White. In 1918, Gilpin returned to her native Colorado and began her professional photography career. Once she moved to Santa Fe, she had abandoned the soft focus style advocated by White for prints with sharp details and a rich range of subtle contrast and tones to document the southwestern landscapes and members of the Pueblo and Navajo tribes. Gilpin's lifetime commitment to photographing these tribes left a valuable record of decades of indigenous life in the Southwest. Ullman stayed in the East, first as a portrait photographer in New York, but is best known today for her documents of the rural people of the South, particularly the mountain peoples of Appalachia and the Gulas of Sea Islands. Slide, please. The most famous photograph in the LOC's collection was taken by Dorothea Lange in 1936 of a destitute pea picker in California with her children gathered around her. The etched worry on the mother's face as she is surrounded by clinging children has been widely published throughout the world. I paired it here with Hansel Mia's photograph of a father comforting his son during times of scant funds. The title is Unemployed Father and son of a Workers' Alliance meeting in 1938. In his hands is an application to join the Workers' Alliance. Lange and Meath were friends and politically aligned with the need for more public assistance to help families find jobs. Slide, please. Sharon Farmer has been a professional photojournalist for more than 40 years, shooting news stories, political campaigns, cultural events, conferences, and portraits. Most notably, Farmer was the first American woman to be hired as a White House photographer. I have to say, officially, since we also know that Ms. Johnson unofficially photographed in the White House, as well as the first African-American and first woman to become director of the White House Photography Office, documenting the beginning of the Clinton-Gore administration. Over the years, she was photographed for many years, many news publications and social justice organizations. And as Helena Tinkham mentioned, she was recently awarded the prestigious Founders Award by the National Press Photographers Association. I paired the joy of Farmer's photograph with Donna Ferrato's disturbing photograph of a husband attacking his wife and beating her mercilessly, because these two photographs represent photography's power to capture both the moments of joy and of violence. For a decade, Ferrato traveled the United States, documenting the events and shelters for women suffering from domestic violence. Ferrato's book, Living with the Enemy, is in its fourth printing. She has testified to lawmakers about her experiences and the need for change. In 2016, Time magazine announced that her photograph of the woman being hit by her husband as one of the 100 most influential photographs of all time. Slide, please. Melissa Ann Penny is best known for her closely observed studies of the stages of women and girls' lives. Her first book was regarding Emma, photographs of American women and girls. Like most of the women discussed, Susanna Robb prefers to initiate projects that she develops over several years. American Idol captures how we spend leisure time, often at marketed moments, festivals, celebrations, and events. This couple is taking a break at Wendy's before their Halloween events. Slide, please. In her mid-30s, Carol Highsmith switched from a successful career in broadcasting to become a professional photographer. In the last 42 years, Highsmith has made more than 100,000 photographs, which she has donated to the Library of Congress, copyright and royalty-free. Working in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico, she has photographed on landscapes, architecture, urban and rural life, people in their work environments. Slide, please. She has also traveled the country widely to document folk art, sculpture, festivals, roadside landmarks, and structured icons. Slide. She's also published over 50 books focusing on cities, states, regions, as well as topic-driven books on barns, lighthouses, folk art, historical restorations, and monuments. Slide, please. The donation of Carol's photography, said Ford Petras, director of the Center of Architecture at LOC, is one of the greatest acts of generosity in the history of the library. She is creating a permanent record of the country and its people for the common good. I hope this sampling encourages you to dwell into the LOC online archive and enjoy its extraordinary wealth of engaging photographers and photographs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne, and I wish you could see the many smiling faces in the room.
Me too. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you all.
A terrific overview from those 1800s right up to the present day of how women are thriving and making their way in the field. But we're going to turn now to Sharon Farmer. And my first question for you, Sharon, and I gave you a little bit of a heads up. Next slide, please. You had a choice, big fork in the road. How did you come to choose photography instead of music?
I really still do both. I find that television is okay, but there's no more joy to be had than what comes for your brain as you get to the instrument. And the eyeballs are connected to the brain, and that brings stuff to the photographer's eyes. And it makes it easy not to watch television. And I love people, and I love musicians who can really play. Every time I sit down, I'm like, whoa, keep working, practice more. But you realize as you practice photography, practice music, it moves a mountain. Music, I meet wonderful people, performance artists, poets. There are people who like to do things with their trash cans and make them into sculpture. That doesn't come in the newspaper all the time. But when you meet those people and feel their vibe and what they about, you're like, oh, I learned something new today. I like that stuff because just to read a newspaper, just to watch TV, it's so passive. And I always feel better when I meet somebody I didn't know, but now I get to know them a little bit. And as time goes on, it grows. Photographers are very gregarious. Hey, this guy right here, he was a great, great, great man for the church, St. Luke's over on Newton Street, Northwest in D.C. He passed away, and he told the people, do not take me in a hearse. Give me the personal treatment. Y'all move my casket on up Georgia, up 14th Street, make that left on Newton, and I'll be back home again until you put me in the ground. When people pass away and they tell you what they want, believe them, help them out, because one day you're going to tell somebody what you want. And if you ain't done the right thing, what you think going to happen to you? So be about the good stuff. When we get together for community events, no matter the reason, it shows little people how much fun they can have if they dance too. It is not always fun dancing by yourself. It's not fun dancing with the phone in your hand. It's not the same as being with people. I always admire people who demonstrate for good stuff. This nun here, I don't know her name till this day, nobody will tell me, but she got arrested protesting what was going on and what the White House had decided about people and justice. This is during the Biden administration, so we have a lot of work yet to do. And you know, police act like police no matter who they are. It's a Secret Service, Metropolitan Police, PG County Police. They act like police. They don't mean to act like so much police. But when you start talking to them about their behavior, yeah, they're defensive because everybody wants to rise in the ranks. Okay, but this is Sybil Moses. Sybil was one of the original Gray Panthers with Representative Claude Pepper from Florida. They turned the White House out through the years to make senior citizens get what they needed to have to continue to thrive in our communities. And she's alone. She lives alone. It was the old Roosevelt home for seniors. It's since been turned into, what do we call it? A very expensive apartment building. We have to fight for what we need for us, for the seniors, for the poor people, or the world's going to go to hell in a handbasket. My man. My man. I was not looking for this job. Every time I rolled past the White House when other presidents were in office, I was not a nice person about it. I'd be cussing as I go by going, they're doing us wrong. But I met a really cool crew. During the Clinton time, I began to love government because some people were really trying to do the right thing. These were my new heroes and heroines. I like that. And then, of course, I like sports. So just because you get knocked down, get up again. Do you know how many people turned me down before I began to get photography jobs? I didn't care. I kept plugging away, plugging away. Got some more stuff to show y'all. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. And we do our thing. And we march. We march for stuff that's necessary. And always, if you march in D.C., people are going to pay attention. D.C.'s a little town. But we march, we march. I love them. This is Davy Yarborough and Esther Williams Yarborough. They married, and they some great jazz provocateurs. They even have the Institute for Jazz for Kids. And so for 8 weeks during a school semester, on the weekends, they get together with the children and teach them how to sing and play instruments. And I always pick up on something. And every time I go in the house, I want to play that piano. I go to demonstrations because government still tries to make sure we don't know everything. And yes, some things really are censored. And if you got into the idea about how government works, if you want a real democracy, you got to be a part of it, which means you got to vote. You got to encourage people to come out for their candidates. And no matter how late or how early it is, somebody's got to do the job. In my neighborhood, oh Lord, the mental health facility that was there when we moved over to 11th Street Northwest, and I'm walking my little dog. We're going up and down the street, and I'm like, what is this? So I run into the building going, hey, this man is out here, and something's wrong. And they say, yeah, we know. His guy ain't here yet. What do you mean his guy? His therapist. Huh? So I go back outside. The guy's still laying in the grass. I said to myself as I scooped up my dog, I said, Caswell, we're going to run up the street, go to the next corner, and go run in the house. So when I got up the street, I grabbed the camera, left Caswell in the house going, where are you going without me? But kept on down the street. The guy was still there. I took some pictures with my 70 to 200 zoom, 2.8 lens, and then went into the building with my camera in my hand. And I said to the guard, okay, when is this person coming? If you don't do nothing about it, something's going to be seen about how y'all run this mental health center. And the guy's out there crying, leave me alone. Oh, hell no. It's terrible how we do ourselves. Stevie Wonder sponsored a march in Washington, D.C. so we could get Martin Luther King's birthday to be a national holiday. I love long lenses because something's going to happen. I'm going to have the right angle. I keep moving when I go shoot stuff. I do not stay in one place because the more you move around, the more you're going to see. And believe me, you're going to see something better. I'm encouraging kids. Kids need cameras. Let those iPhones be their cameras too because it may project, get somebody to want to be an artist, want to do performance art, want to be a photographer, in charge of who gets hired or not. No matter what kind of day you're having, there's joy to be found everywhere. Silhouettes are one of the most strongest things you could ever do. Shoot for the light and let the people become the shadows. This is around by the tidal basin. This is in our neighborhood. Do not stay home. Go out and shoot pictures.
Thank you, Sharon. That was great. So, of course, we've had a whirlwind, but that's Sharon. A terrific reminder, I hope, of the wide variety of emotions and the actions that photography can cause. It's not a passive still picture, is it? It's your turn. We have microphones that can come through the room. Micah Messenheimer is there. And either Kate or Adam will also have a mic. If you don't get a chance to ask your question, or if we need to stay in touch after, I put the link called Ask a Librarian on the slide, and know that you can reach the Prints and Photographs Division by writing to that email. So ask.loc.gov. Ask a librarian. We like to talk with you.
And I love librarians.
I've heard that, Sharon. Is there a question to start us off this evening? Yes, please.
Have you ever had experiences of people who didn't want you to take pictures of them?
Oh, yeah.
Let me,
And how did you handle that?
I'm very quickly going to repeat so the whole room can hear, since we caught you mid-question. Sharon, what experiences have you had when people did not want you to make the photo, and how did you handle it?
I say to them, oh, you're so okay. I mean, you're in the atmosphere. You don't want your picture taken? You sure now before I walk away? And if you like it better if I got away from you and shot back at you, would you be less nervous about that? And by the way, I am asking you for permission to take your picture. But I saw this great shot that first, and here I am.
So I take it that the tip is make the photo first and then approach. Next question.
Except with the homeless, because they're already disempowered. And if you know somebody's having a rougher life than you just by the way they seem to appear or look, don't even think about taking a picture. Let them be in charge and say to them, do you mind if I take your picture? Say that to them, and they'll say yes or no. And if you ask them, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes, because nobody else is paying them any attention. If they ask for money, they're going to get at least $5 from me. Because otherwise, if I don't give them $5, what does that say about me? If you don't share the wealth of your life, if you don't share the wealth of your experiences, the good stuff goes away. People forget what it's like to feel good because you help somebody. Help people feel good. Tell them, get their money away.
Thank you. Next question is by you, Adam.
Good evening. Is there someone or something that you have yet to photograph that you really want to?
Probably the Martians up in outer space. But I'm privileged.
You get a second choice, too, for here on Earth.
Here on Earth, it's almost like whatever it is. My eyes going to decide, well, my brain is connecting to my eyes. And the decision gets made rapidly because you only have but so long to contemplate, one, do I shoot it in the middle or left or the right? Do I get down on the ground? Do I shoot up? You got to be natural and say to yourself, whatever is going through my body, that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I do. That's why I try to make everything look different, because I'm scared of boring people to death. Oh, yeah, I saw her work. Everything was shot the same level. She made the same mistakes no matter which way she went. Gonna be bad. I want to be bad.
All right. I have a question for Anne, unless others of you.
Uh-huh.
All right. So, Anne, over there in Houston, or west in Houston, could you tell us about some choices that you made in your life? Because you mentioned to me that you actually began your career as a photographer. What turned you towards curatorial work, the exhibition, the book writing?
Well, okay, I had a camera as a small child. For those of you who know Robert Frank, you probably know a famous photograph of a an African-American man kneeling by the Mississippi River with a cross. I photographed him and talked to him as a child. I actually waded out into the Mississippi, which put my legs knee deep in the mud, to be baptized by him. And he was fascinating. He had walked the length of the Mississippi 3 times. And each, this is before they built the second bridge over the Mississippi, and we had ferry boats go back and forth. And he stood at the banks of the Mississippi and begged ferry boat people, people coming off the ferry boats to come and be baptized. And so I took pictures of him, which I still have in a little square snapshot camera. But then after college, and I got serious about photography, was a photographer in college, I saw Robert Frank's photographed, and I realized that there was a serious difference in Robert Frank's vision of that man by the Mississippi and my snapshot. And so since I had majored in art history in college, I decided that it would make more sense for me to become a photography historian. And I was very lucky to study with Beaumont Newhall and Nathan Lyons and later John Sarkovsky. So I sort of hit the trifecta. And it's been, I mean, I got paid to look at art for 40 years. It was glorious. It was so special to meet the photographers, to work with them, to do exhibitions, to acquire their work for the museum's collection. You know, I have only happiness that I was so lucky.
Thank you. We have optimistic people with us this evening, don't we? The good fortune. Good fortune. Thank you, Anne. Any other questions? And, please. I think that will be fine. I'll check the other side of the room. Please.
Do you think that we'll see another Black woman director of photography in our lifetime?
Absolutely. Everybody gets better and better. That's why you take more than one shot, so you can get it better. And if you can't compare your shot first, your shot second, your shot third, how are you going to grow? And then if you show it to your peer group, they'll tell you if it's okay or if that ain't right, that ain't cool, you need some work. So when you listen to the people around you about how they feel about your photography work, that's a good indication if you're going in the right direction. Plus, photography is that kind of group thing where everybody needs to get along so nobody's blocking their shot. The other thing is because of the equipment, no matter what we buy, sometimes we still don't know how to work it, and we done read the book 4 times, okay? That's my problem with Photoshop now. I'm like, I really miss Duncan and being in a dark room because every time Photoshop or Photo Mechanic changes something on the program, I'm down a rabbit hole I can't get out of. And that's frustrating. That's when I get up and take a break, get some water. No, maybe I need a beer before I go back upstairs to the computer room. The other deal is because everybody wants their stuff yesterday, I got to work 2 computers sometime. I got one assignment on one computer and the other assignment on the other. And I take turns going back and forth to make sure everybody gets their work at the same time. Because you have to figure out a balance. And the best balance is just go ahead and work it. Don't watch TV. Put some good jazz on or some music and get with it.
Second question.
Okay, my second question is, what is bringing you joy today?
Say it again.
What is bringing you joy today?
Oh, God. People who are about the art and about right things, in spite of, no matter what the art is, because art is art, be it drawings or you're going to do some tap dancing or you're going to do some painting. I live with an artist. Art is in the house every day. And then we got 2 cats who got minds of their own. Am I shooting the cats? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Practice how fast they go. Can you get that? That comes in handy when you got to shoot track, okay? Comes in handy. I learned a lot just shooting the cats.
Oh, it's so good to hear the laughter. Thank you. And we have one more question here, and go ahead and change the slide, and then we'll,
I have
please.
2 questions.
All right, it's a double dipper night.
How did you make the choice to do photography, and was there something else that you were choosing as a career beforehand?
My mother, bless her heart, had cameras in the house. And her brother got his way through Hampton University because she and her sister sent him a camera. And I love my uncle. He was a cool guy. My mother would take all these pictures and then put them in this Rolodex thing that you could flip through when you came to visit us at the house. And because my mother sewed, the 4 farmers, if we went to a picnic, each one of us had on the same kind of material, but the shirt or the blouse were cut out different. So no matter what, if you found one farmer, you could find the other 3. So my mother was always dressed clean. She made her clothes. She and Dad are going out to the ball. And I'm like, whoa. When I came home from college, of course, I brought my camera gear too. My father said, don't you want to build a house, make a house? You should live at home for a couple of years while you figure out what you want to do. Well, I fell for that. So I stayed home for a couple of years. And then one night I come home too late, and he's like, as long as you live in my house. I said, oh, shit, I got to get out of here. So you figure out that every time they get dressed or clean, take their picture. And I would put colored gels on my Speedotron lights, drag them. I got 3 lights going, and it's like really cool. They look good, and I call that a successful picture. Before they go out, when they come back in, listen, they always say to us, don't look for us before noon. We're going to be out all night. Oh, okay. And then one day I said, well, I'm going to get them when they're coming in. If they weren't cleaner coming in than they were when they went out, I don't know what to say. So my parents were cool. That's how I learned.
And my second question is, how did you combat adversity within your career with being a Black woman in photography?
I ain't take no SHITTT, okay? Even if I got to drag you into a corner because you decided to be offensive, or we have rooms where we can go in by ourselves and develop our film. I don't need no company in there. So when you're trying to come through the door that I'm already in, I will crush your toe in the door. And I tell you that. And then they think twice about walking around limping, okay? Because if I had to tell people how you got hurt, I'm gonna tell the truth. You shouldn't have been in that room with me. I'm by myself for a reason. Do you invite people to come in and do darkroom stuff with you? No. Those kind of things. Other things are like, I know the thing that really grievously pissed me off at the Washington Post. Look at here. I'm the only thing going on that day. And other people have been out doing their assignments and they got their stuff work. Their work is done. I'm still doing my work because they waited to call me at the last minute. And then my stuff is rolling off the drum. That gives it the sheen and the shine. And then I run to the editor trying to be sure about what it is she wants to lead with the story. And she tells me, so I run back to get my pictures off of where are my pictures? Where are my, they're not there. You think I want to go back in and print them 10 images again? No, I'm already like close to deadline. So somebody says out loud, I can't quite tell who at first, I think you'll find your pictures in the trash bin right in front of the dryer. I said, no, I don't. And then they started saying who did it. I was in his chest, okay? And then he started to push me. I take karate too. Before I realized that my leg was up in the air, inches from his face, because back in those days I was flexible. And I had fun beating up on the people who had bigger belts than the belt that I had. I never went past a green belt. But I was always sure of myself, I'm going to nail you. If you throw combinations, you're going to get one of them in there. I always got one in. And he understood, don't mess with me. And when he came anywhere near me, I go like this. I'm telling you, don't come near me. Because if you do that, what else are you doing I don't know about? If somebody doesn't treat you right, call them on it. Did your mother raise you like that? Did your daddy know about you? Do all that stuff. And what comes around goes around is my famous saying.
Thank you, Sharon.
Power to the people.
Life philosophy. Stand up for yourself.
You better, because the women who get beat down are talking to the wrong people. Talk to people who are going to build you up. Talk to guys who love you and say, what can I do to help you? With no BS going with that. How am I going to help you? Because I see you're trying hard. I got a lot of help from the older guys who could appreciate that I ain't take no guff. And one guy, James K.W. Atherton, master printer.
His photos.
He taught me how to do a whole lot of stuff the other guys weren't showing me. So I knew who my friends were in the department, and I knew who they were not.
It's true. We changed the slide to introduce. Oh, do you have a question? How are we doing on time, Adam? We're good. Okay, great. And then I'll show you the 2 new books at the library.
Hi,
Please.
Sharon. I have looked up to you for decades now, and your joy is always there. And I think if anybody ever gives you any shit, you take care of it. And I just love how you take pictures. And is there any thing in the past where you thought, oh, I wish I would have gotten that picture? Do you ever look back and go, man, I should have gotten that? Sometimes I do that, you know?
It wakes me up in the middle of the night.
Right, me too.
It's my nightmare. Right. I'm like, oh man, I should have gone the other way up the steps instead of the way I went. I barely got there. And then I didn't have long to take pictures, and I'm looking at the little stuff I got going, oh, you should have gone early. So it became my passion. No matter what the assignment was, I'm getting there an hour early because people are going to tell you things you didn't know were coming. 2, no matter what I'm shooting, I'm going to stay an hour after the time. That's the golden moment. People have let the guards down. They've had a good time doing whatever it was, and now they're talkative, they're animated with each other, with their audience that they've invited. The whole thing just changes, and you get real people having a real life and a real conversation, and they got eyeball contact. You ever talk to somebody that looks over here, look over there, up there, everywhere but in your eyes? Yeah, watch them people, okay?
Hey, Sharon, how about personally? How about personally in your family? Are there any pictures that you didn't take that you wanted? Because I always think about my grandmother, and I thought, man, I wish I would have taken like 1,000 more of her.
I was into music when I was younger more than into photography. My mother was the photographer, and I didn't decide to be one until we started having demonstrations on Ohio State's campus because the university wasn't treating everybody fairly. And when you recognize what's fair and what's not fair, it's not hard to figure that out. And when you know what the deal is, believe me, if you don't speak up, your life is not going to get better. And I brood over stuff I did not tackle head on. I mean, I brood on, I should have said this. I should have done that. What am I going to do now? And then you think like a chess move. I love chess. Anybody play chess? I love chess because that's brain against brain, movement against movement. And in the course of doing that, it gives you a relief that you got to make the right move, be it physically, mentally, or with your friends, or people you just met. You have to be conscious. A conscious human being is the best kind of human being. When somebody says, I didn't see you, I know you're lying already, number 1. Number 2, I'm going to make that move again. I'm telling you this time so you don't do what you did last time, like put your foot up because you thought I was going to trip over you. I got what's going on in this business. Women have always been relegated to be, you do the printing, you do the chemicals, and the photographers who are women, the guys are trying to tell them what to do. Oh, hell no, we're all equal photographers, and everybody doesn't shoot the same. And a lot of women shoot better than the guys.
Thank you. I'm scanning the room one more time for final question. Yes, Micah, up front here.
What was the worst job you did get and the best job you didn't get, or assignment?
Okay, best job you did get? No.
The best one you didn't get, the one you really wanted.
Best job you lost.
Yes.
And
then,
the worst job you got.
Yes, the worst job or assignment that, you may have thought it was going to be different and it wasn't.
Okay.
The best job that I was hoping to get was to be a full-time photographer at the Washington Post. But I was working for the weekly sections, and when people were sick, didn't want to come to work, on vacation, they would call me. Then I started spending more time in the photo section instead of with the weekly section. And my pictures were strong. One good thing does lead to another. That's the fun about growing. And as openings would come up, I'd say to somebody, and especially to the people running the department. Matt Lewis was a Pulitzer Prize winner for all the work he did for the Potomac Magazine through the years. And I'd go, hey, and he'd go, yeah, I know. We'll talk about it. But we would never talk about it. So I kept freelancing on the side, too. I'm working for a little bit of everybody. And everything I work at brings me new knowledge I didn't know before. Plus, I had this heavy-duty black speedotron equipment, 2,400 watts. I could light up a big space. And I'd practice doing the lights and doing it right so everything would come out right. The more you do, the better you get. The more you just read and don't do it, you ain't learning nothing. You cannot learn by reading alone. But you can figure out what button you should have pushed that you didn't, And the worst job, there's really no worse jobs. The worst job I thought I had to do was go down to Point Lookout on the Maryland side, which sat across from Virginia. And they were celebrating National Confederate Day. And I'm like, no, you're not sending me down there. Really? Sharon, you're going to be great at it. You want me to get killed down there? Because you know I'm not going to put up with nothing. Sharon, you're time enough for life. Just go on down and do the job, and you're going to learn something new. And I'm like, okay, get the muscles going, get ready. But I packed my stuff up, went on down the road, and damn if I didn't have a good time anyway, even though some of the Confederate people were trying to be Confederate. And I made it clear, I ain't putting up with this. I read all the Civil War books, said, all right, what do you know about Civil War? And they didn't know much. I found out I knew more than they did. Ow, I love that. That was the worst job I had to do, and it turned out all right.
Thank you, Sharon. You're good at finding the positive. That's
got to.
a good character trait. On the slides right now, you're seeing one more reason to celebrate. This very week, the Library of Congress has released a new book called The Joy of Looking. 100 photographs for sale in our gift shop, I'm obligated to mention. But you will find that 20% of the photographs are by women. I counted. So it's growing stronger, still underrepresented perhaps, but there and present. And we have some copies if you'd like to take a look. The exhibition, called Not an Ostrich, also came with a publication. They refer to it as a zine, so it is a lighthearted look in many ways at some of the photographs on display, and a good memory book afterwards. And it helps me at least. I forgot to mention, it's called Not an Ostrich because that's the title of the photograph on the cover of the book. This was a huge poultry fair in New York City, and a Floridora goose who is not an ostrich. But we hope it reminds us all that with that humorous title and yet incongruous title, take a photo, look twice. More might be going on than you think is. And I think I'll leave it there. There will be a webcast from this evening. Yeah, I think that's the last thing I needed to remember. Oh, Anne, yes. Yeah, I wanted to mention the webcast. Go ahead.
I just want to say to Sharon that I had so looked forward to meeting her. And after listening to her presentation, I'm all the more disappointed that I didn't get a chance to meet her. And I hope it happens someday.
Definitely. We will bring you both together. So we're going to thank you for this evening and joining us. Sharon and I and the 4 photography curators, Kate Fogel is here, Adam Sylvia, Micah Messenheimer, and Michelle Smiley. And you'll see us moving up towards the exhibition. Love to talk with you more about photography. I could feel you smiling as the different stories of lights and cameras. Many of you have brought cameras tonight. It was just a great evening for me. Thank you very much.
And you're supposed to use those cameras.
True.
No flash, but have some fun.